Hey everyone, welcome back to the Elevate Podcast, the thought leadership platform designed for behavioral health executives navigating growth, innovation, and impact. Today we're diving into a topic that almost every operator participates in, but very few truly master: how to get an ROI from conferences. Most organizations show up without a clear strategy and leave without knowing what they actually gained. So the question becomes, are conferences just a cost or are they growth lever? Joining us today is Doug Edwards. He's the Senior Vice President of HMP Global, a longtime leader in behavioral health, media, education, and events who has spent decades at the center of the industry's most important conversations. In today's episode, Doc breaks down a smarter way to think about conference ROI, not just in terms of referrals or immediate deals, but through a full pre, during, and after framework that helps leaders turn conference participation into stronger partnerships, better decisions, and real strategic advantage. So if you're a CEO, founder, executive, director, or growth leader in the behavioral health space trying to make conferences more valuable for your organization, this conversation is for you. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Gary. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And you're absolutely right. Conferences are an amazing opportunity for all types of treatment organizations. But just like anything in life, preparation is key. So I'm excited to explore today what that looks like and what I've seen that works and maybe what I've seen that doesn't work.
I'm sure you have a wealth of strategies and experiences that you can share because I think with your 3 decades of experiences in this category, I'm pretty sure you've seen both the good, bad, and the ugly. And with that said, Doc, do you mind just give the listeners a quick background on yourself, what you've been up to and what your focus is nowadays?
Sure. Yeah, I've been in this field for 26 years. I started off as an editor on a publication about managed care carve-outs in behavioral health care, which is a little bit dry, I have to admit. And this is pre-parity days, so the landscape in the behavioral health reimbursement world was completely different. And these days, I'm a senior vice president at HMP Global. We're the largest producer of addiction treatment and education conferences in behavioral health care. And we're probably best well known for our events, such as the Behavioral Health AI Summit, the RX Summit, the West Coast Cape Cod and East Coast Symposia, Evolution of Psychotherapy, and TCIV. And HMP itself is one of the leaders in medical and healthcare education across the country. I also run our senior living division, and then we are one of the leading educators in wound care, cardiology, oncology, psychiatry. So I got a lot of experiences that unfortunately show my age, but also give me an opportunity to share what works. When I started in this field, true story, Gary, maybe you were like this too some years ago, I did have hair. I had nice long hair, and it is no longer there.
Oh, that was before it was digital pictures. I think I have some Polaroid backs where, but otherwise there's no evidence that I had hair at any point.
No evidence? Now there's a little bit out there of me. If you search long and deep, but we're going back to 2000. That's pre-Facebook.
Yeah, that puts things in perspective, right? First and foremost, thank you for putting together these events. I've been to the majority of the ones you host, and I'm excited to have this conversation. I think just to frame everything, I've been without exaggeration, probably 1,000 conferences in my professional lifetime. And it's because prior to this, I was working very closely in some channel sales arrangements with Google and Microsoft. And that's like a couple of conferences per month. So that quickly adds up. And I learned throughout the way that very often people are focusing, you attend, here's the cost, here's the ROI, the deal structure you got to come back with. But learn so much over the years on how you can extract value in so many other ways that later quantify into remarkable ROI. And after attending several of your conferences, I can speak from experience that somebody who came into the industry 3 years ago, a little bit over 3 years ago, knew a lot about marketing and sales and systems and all that, but was new to behavioral health. I remember attending your TCIV conference in Arizona. And it was just an eye-opening experience because some of the sessions talking about the market density across levels of care, about the payer mix landscape, the technology platforms that were available, that just broadens your entire view. And so I want to say thank you for that. And I think it adds tremendous value to the conference in addition to the market in terms of connections, sharing experiences, etc. So with all that said, maybe let's just unpack, like, how many years have you been doing conferences now under HMP?
Under HMP, our division was acquired by HMP in 2018. And some of our conferences, like TCIV, is now in its 12th year. And then we have grown through acquisition and launching new events. For example, TCIV is in its 12th or 13th year. And that is something that came with the acquisition. We acquired the West Coast and Cape Cod Symposia in 2021. And then, for example, this year, we launched the Behavioral Health AI Summit, just a sister conference to TCIV. We launched that we just had it a few weeks ago. Things are moving so fast. I was like, when was that again? Yeah, it was just 2 weeks ago. And next up for us in the market is the West Coast Symposium, where I'll see you in Palm Springs in about 30 days.
Amen. Looking forward to it. So with so many conferences under your belt evolving over the last decade or so, how have you seen that conference landscape evolve?
Absolutely. I can dig into that. The conference landscape, what's interesting is over the past 30 years, some things have really changed and some things haven't. So, for example, most of our events, the primary way that, say, a treatment program that is looking to share its services, they buy a table, they buy a booth, they get so much space, they get so much passes. That hasn't really changed. Maybe prices have changed over the past 30 years, but that's the general layup. But the way that you can prepare for these events has changed so drastically. And it's not about just showing up with the right pen or the right gizmo or whatever for your booth. It's about showing up informed about what kind of services you offer, having a clear value proposition that distinguishes you from others in the room, and making sure that your business development or marketing team is really ready to go from the moment they get on site. Because sure, we have these conferences in very nice places. Palm Springs, West Palm Beach, Scottsdale, these are nice places to be. These are not vacations for your staff. They are opportunities for you to build business, build referrals, build connections. And whereas I do think they can be helpful for your staff's mental health and for helping to keep them motivated and engaged with your program, I think over the last 30 years, particularly in the substance use treatment space, organizations have realized that to be successful, really preparing for the event in advance is important.
And preparing for the conference in advance, I think you're preaching to the choir. I think besides understanding the attendees and making sure your value prop, your collateral, your messaging, however you want to position yourself in the market is on point. I think that's particularly important. But a thing that I realize as well is, like, every organization typically has a challenge in one area of the operations, whether it's from the initial lead generation marketing to intake process to finance, billing, revenue cycle management, the software component, and maybe identifying some points, some bottlenecks throughout your operation where you're looking to get some answers. I think that's also very helpful. At least I can speak for myself. I found a lot of value in that. Just showing up basically as an interviewer and going and asking a lot of questions. A few golden nuggets is going to surface as a result of that. So with that said, because I think I can, like, give a reference to, for example, the TCIV versus West Coast Symposium, two different audiences and attendance levels, etc. As a general rule of thumb, depending, of course, on the facility attending, which team members from organization would you recommend participating? Is it one department over another? Is it a mix of several?
Very good question. And the people often ask me, why are we doing 7 events in the market? And my answer is, I would love to do just one event. It would make my life so much easier. But the field itself is so fractured and siloed. And when you look at that and then you look inside organizations, they also tend to be very siloed. That's why we have events for all different types of people involved in behavioral healthcare. For example, when you're looking at any event to attend, you want to think about who is going to derive the most value from my organization from this event. So you take an event like West Coast Symposium, which I consider very much a big tent event because we have opportunities for clinicians to earn CME. There's definitely a FOMO aspect for your business development team if you're looking to build connections in California. It's a great opportunity for your marketing team to see what kind of messages are being shared in one of the largest addiction conferences in the country. And then from the executive team, there, like you said, there's a great opportunity to not only network with fellow executives, see your staff in action, but also, frankly, to go shopping. What products and services are available in the market? When I started in this field, like I said, I was a journalist 26 years ago, and we published a magazine. It came out every 2 months, and you could flip through it and see what EHRs were out there. And now these days, of course, you can run a AI search or a Google search, but there's something different about actually getting on site, talking to these organizations, talking to your peers. Do you use this company? What have you heard? And also, what I always just find interesting for anyone on your staff that you identify to go to a conference is just walking around and hearing what's the latest. What are you seeing in the exhibit hall? What are the top sessions on the agenda? We build all these things based on feedback from the community. So when you're there, our goal is to make sure you are learning the latest, you're seeing the latest, you're perusing in the exhibit hall a wide variety of opportunities. And of course, for a conference like West Coast Symposium, there's pretty much something for everybody. But if you're an executive and you want to focus on growth and valuation, in particular at your event, we have the TCIV conference, which is specifically focused on that niche. So it really depends upon what are your goals, what are you looking to get out of an event, what are you hoping to learn, who are you looking to meet? So, TCIV, for example, we can just continue with that one because it's our executive event. It's not a clinical event. We don't have continuing medical education credits. We don't have generally clinical staff attending because it's tailored specifically for executives. It has more of a retreat type feel. And I have a conference that I just wrapped up 2 months ago, the RX and Illicit Drug Summit. If you were really into addiction policy, we had 8 members of Congress from both political parties and people from all 50 states there. Really, I'm just, what's your goals? What do you want to learn? What's your interest? And that's why I do 7 events and get a lot of airline miles. Not as many. I don't know if I've been to 1,000 events, Gary.
I think my math is too late in the afternoon. It's probably a couple of hundreds.
But even that, I've probably been to a couple hundred. We used to do many moons ago. We would do lunch and learns all across the country, and I was able to afford at the time. I'm not sure I want to travel that much anymore, but I certainly love showing up to our events all over. They're really fun.
Oh yeah, because certainly say it's a blast. I think on the topic of redefining ROI, and I was referencing to a conversation I had with I think it was on LinkedIn where a few folks was commenting on conference participation, and it's a waste of time, and very often it's very business development driven. There's a strong focus, and we got into a little exchanging some comments, and on my end, I see it in the eyes of as a facility owner. For example, you mentioned the TCIV. I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, must have been. I've been there every year, but the investment banker group, I think they're called BAF Group or something like that.
BAF Group, Dexter always opens it and gives a amazing lay of the landscape.
So the other day I have a prospective client, now a client, and they come on board. They were referred from a billing provider. They were starting up a new shop. It's some experienced people in the industry, but just deciding to now establish a new brand. They come together and they come here, they have X amount of beds, etc. And this location and this level of care. And the first thing that comes to mind is like, why did you choose to be out of network and in this particular state? And why are you focusing on that? That's what we knew, and that's what we were told. And this is how we get the biggest reimbursement rates. And I'm like, I understand that, but let me refer back to this conversation from BAF Group a couple of years ago, where they were talking about the valuation is 6-8 time multiple EBITDA for a PHP versus an out-of-network residential small facility in California is 1 time multiple the EBITDA, pretty much like the lowest valuation you can, because it's so unpredictable. They discount the valuation so substantially because there's no certainty about how it can scale based on those reimbursement rates, and the acquisition cost is so high. So I'm like, if you had all that intel in mind, would you have structured the opening of your facility differently and catered differently, maybe with a 5-10 year lens? And for me, that's where I was like, listen, I'm not talking as a software vendor, a service provider. I was looking at, okay, the insights that can be extracted can be extremely valuable to make sure you're taking the right course with your facility according to market trends, reimbursement rates, different challenges, legislation changes. Those kind of topics are sometimes hard to decipher accurately in an online media forum. And this gives you a chance to hear them, speak, engage, connect, exchange experiences. And so, yeah, I would say that for me is like an intangible aspect for ROI to consider, to say, yes, you may come back with some strategic partnerships, you may have acquired a new client or several, but have you gathered some insights that will help you adjust your strategy as an operation the next 6-12 months? I think that's very valuable as well. Do you have some examples like that you could share with the listeners? Like I mentioned from personal experience, this one that could be relevant for an executive or operator owner?
Absolutely. For an executive operator owner, there's many different ways that you can use a conference experience to achieve your goals. And it really comes down to, what are those goals? And a lot of times organizations have not taken the time to say, what do we want to accomplish? Are we sending the right person? Are we sending the right people? Do we need multiple people on site? What is our goal here? What do we want? And that's a conversation that sometimes organizations need to just step back and answer that as they develop their outreach strategy for conferences and any of their activities. Because like anything, a conference can be and should be part of your overall either lead generation strategy, marketing strategy. It shouldn't be forgotten about, but it shouldn't be the only thing that you do. You know, what I see organizations like treatment centers doing very successfully at our events are using them for multiple reasons. An easy one that lots forget about is staff recruitment. So a lot of our treatment centers a lot of our conferences are in certain parts of the country for a reason. So I do an event in La Quinta, California, and I do an event in Providence, Rhode Island, because people from Providence probably are not going to California and vice versa. But if you're a local or regional treatment center and you more than likely have staff openings and you have a booth, why not share those as part of your clinical services as well? Why not have your recruiter on site, someone who can perhaps even arrange to have interviews right there while they're on site with people? It's something that organizations often forget about. And then in terms of developing those relationships that can lead to good partnerships, I think it's important for organizations to realize that when people stop by your booth, pick up resources, it's probably relatively unlikely that 2 weeks later, someone you've never met is just going to drop out of the blue, call you and say, I have someone who I think would be a perfect fit for you. More than likely, what's going to happen is they're going to say something like, gosh, someone just came through my practice who has an eating disorder. That is something I cannot treat outside what I do. And they need a level of care I can't provide. I was just at an event and I stopped by XYZ treatment center. I picked up some literature. I'm going to give them a call and see if I can stop by, tour their facility, community, learn more about them. And that's how these long-term partnerships that I hear so much about in the work. But if you're not in the room, someone else is going to be. Someone else is going to have that booth. Someone else is going to capture that market share. Someone else is going to be part of that conversation. So you need to be there. Really.
Yes. And you said initially when we started out, failing to prepare is preparing to fail, right?
Essentially, yes. I don't know if I said those exact words, but I like how you said it.
Maybe that's how I typically phrase it. So to paraphrase what you said, I think that's a key component. Besides establishing the objectives, what are we trying to accomplish, ROI, messaging, all the different aspects, it's also understanding the audience, the room. And I know very often most folks want to get the attendee list in advance. You can typically see sponsors, companies listed. And so for me, I think, because we've done some consulting for facilities where it's like it translates into the whole operation, and the business development department is all of a sudden a challenge. And I say it's this classic one of the first books in sales from Neil Rackman, Spin Selling, right? The acronym SPIN. S is for situational, right? You don't want to walk in and ask a lot of questions to people. It may be a conferences and you're networking and you're engaging, but if you come to the conference in mind with these 20 companies I want to work with, right? And you have already researched them based on your intel, who do they cater to, who are their demographics, you may have an understanding of their pay and mix, the landscape, the focus, etc. You can come to it with a better approach and tailor not your pitch but your introduction, because it's the very first impression in terms of like I was under the impression you do XYZ, and if you're wrong they'll probably correct you, but in that sense then you can better position, say that caught my interest because we have these scenarios where there might be some synergies here, or we could complement one another. And I feel that can go a long way, because people not only takes you more serious as an organization, but it's not perceived as like the fatigue that you see that sometimes, because I like to observe a lot and people are interacting and they're high-fiving and they're chatting and then come afternoon, they dial down. Instead of using the energy, not to saying that you can't chit-chat and engage, but at least you're intentional about the people you want to meet with and how you want to approach them, and you show them the respect of understanding who they are before you want them to understand what you're trying to accomplish. It really goes along. I think that's universal, but that was my other comment to this group of individuals where I said, are you attending with that strategy in mind? Are you preparing? Are you identifying the key stakeholders of the organization? What do you want to talk with them about? What questions would you ask? Or have you just shown up and say, hey, what do you guys do? And that's a big difference, I think.
You're right. Yeah. And one thing that a lot of people I encourage are, let's say the business development reps. If you're purchasing a booth, that's probably who's working your booth. One thing that I encourage that the best reps in the field I see do this time and time again is they go to the sessions. So for most of our conferences, anyone can go to the sessions. And it's about learning the vocabulary, learning the top issues, being able to relate to, and they may be clinicians themselves, but they're off busy doing business development things most of the time. If they're in the rooms, if they attend a couple sessions at the conference, that sort of knowledge will seep into their conversations with patients, with families, with other clinical people. And the only way you're going to hear that is if you sit through a couple presentations and learn things.
Amen.
And why not take advantage of it? It's there for everybody. And I encourage people to do something as simple as, if you're sending staff to a conference, create an Excel file and find out who's going to be where doing what. Because, it's an investment that you're making. And of course, there's going to be opportunities to meet with people that you already know, but it's also a great chance to make some new friends.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And I think I speak specifically, I think for the BDs, that's a perfect angle and a perfect opportunity. And I think you would level up several steps by having that acumen and business and understanding the jargon language across the entire business. I also reference to it as for like attending the conference, and then if I was to, and now I'm attending the conferences, let's just say this is, what are the trending topics that you are curious about, that you want to understand better? I think it's right in your face for me. I'm thinking a lot AI. I think everybody is, but I'm thinking a lot about compliance. I'm thinking security. I'm thinking stuff like HIPAA that people haven't given Jack's ass about in the past, but now is more important than ever. Attending the conversations and questioning, how do you combat that? What's your view on this, or how are you planning to attack this? Then you open up those conversations, and typically, if you ask questions to some people that are smarter than yourself, and I like to do that, then you get some very good insights. I recall also, and this is several years ago, and there was I can't remember, one of your conferences where this was still new. It was like there was a discussions on psychedelics, right?
Oh, yeah.
And maybe you can speak more to it.
Yes, that's a great, around 2020, we started bringing the psychedelics conversations to our conferences because we knew that this was something that it's on the radar. And it is not only a business opportunity, there are also concerns around inappropriate use. And it's also a clinical tool that is emerging. And then just a few days ago, we heard about the administration fast-tracking research on psychedelics. And if you had come to TCIV in 2020, or I guess we were virtual that year, 2021, where we started bringing up psychedelics, you would be at this point educated, prepared, and maybe even ready so that when a business opportunity opens, that you're ready to go. Whereas if you hadn't attended conferences, if you hadn't heard about these new trends, and this information is new to you now, great, come to our conferences and learn about it, certainly, but you may have missed out on some critical years in terms of preparing vis-a-vis your competition. Yes. And I think it's the same thing with AI. AI is moving so quickly that you have to be in the room listening to the people, talking to your peers, hearing what the vendors are offering in order to stay on top of it quick enough. And maybe that's the ultimate irony with AI. I mean, ChatGPT and everything else can tell you anything, but it's basically just pulling on what's available online. And these conversations and things that are happening so quickly that before any of that can translate into something that it can read digitally, you're having conversations with people on site and staying ahead of the curve.
Yes.
And even like working with solution partners like yourself, when you come to a conference as a healthcare executive and you talk to someone like you have the advantage of knowing what multiple programs are doing. You have a broader view. I think that's something else that sometimes people don't appreciate when they talk to the sponsors on site. You're talking to an EHR vendor. They have experience with 30, 40, 50, 60 different operations. And you may have a problem that they can say, oh, we have a 2-click solution to that. But you're never going to know unless you're out there having those conversations. And a simple Google search may not get you the answers that you're looking for.
Very well said. I continuously always get demos, and there's always a few surprises that I didn't expect in gaining the partnerships or engagements at different levels. But sometimes things you can't just see the company and the solution and its best features on a website. And very often you speak with a sales rep and they may have managed it inappropriately, and then it never really revealed the full potential or how they can accommodate to your facility or your given circumstances. As an executive, I like to then participate, and we have 45 plus clients right now, and every day they encourage, Gary, I have a problem with my billing company, or Gary, we need to shift EHR. Which one do you recommend? And I feel almost the fiduciary responsibility with these clients to say, okay, I've had conversations, we have clients, I've had access, I've done demos with these. I really like this, but this may not be a good fit for the next client because there's difference between being a 16-bed facility and a 200-bed. There's a whole different operational cost structure, and maybe the budget for configuration or tech stack is not the same. So a lot of considerations, and I think attending a conference by unpacking the different tools and comparing one another is very valuable.
Yeah, and you're probably going to spend, more than likely, you're going to spend a lot of money on this. And a lot of times, vendors of all types send their executive teams there. Meet the people that you're going to be working with and see if you want to work with them. You're not going to get that through a web search. You're not going to get that through Zoom, frankly.
Yeah. I'll tell you right that I'm not going to name names, but I had a client, for example, they're like, shit, Gary, we have done this. And I was like, boy, you should have done your research. They locked themselves into a 60-month, 5-year agreement. I'm like, that's really, I've been in the CRM software as a service game. That's a long ass contract for SMB mid-sized market software sales. So kudos to the sales rep, but on this locking yourself into a piece of software that may not be the right for your business for 60 months. Talk about an ROI in preventing that from happening by comparing it with a few other solutions on site, undistracted, and then or use that as the follow-up initial to engage in more conversations. I think that's a big aspect besides the preparation. And I guess that's back to the core of really looking at the organization and say, besides who's attending from the team, what are we trying to accomplish? Then is there also which problems are we or issues are we having as an organization that we can try to seek some answers for?
Who do we want to meet? What kind of relationship do we want to build?
Yeah.
And then talk to us or whatever conferences you're working with. Talk to them, tell them who you want to meet. And our goal is to make you very happy. Tell us who you want to meet. We'll see what we can do to help facilitate those connections for you. In some cases, that might be purchasing a booth. In some cases, it might be having your clinical staff attend this session. You use us as a resource.
Amen. That's a good encouragement, and I suggest everybody follows up on that. We'll get your information shared momentarily. Just have a quick question, because we're talking so much about preparation, attendance, and goal setting, the process about it. What about now you come home, right? Now the sizzle goes down and you're not in the sunny side of the pool, and it's all, what is there some best practices as for how do you debrief the rest of the team or your executives and make some concise action items or next steps after that conference? What would your advice be on that?
So this is actually a great place where AI certainly can make your life better. So what I would do is whoever you send to the conference, I would have them just write down their random notes, drop it into ChatGPT, ask it to create an executive report or a report for whomever, quick takeaway bullets, and use that as an opportunity to educate your staff. For example, I went to this conference and I learned that there are 5 new AI vendors offering XYZ. That's fascinating because these are problems that we have had. Now we know there's a solution. We need to look into that. Or if you're like looking to build referral type relationships and connections in the clinical community, I went to these sessions. People had questions on XYZ. I talked to these people who stopped by our booth. There's a real need for this type of program in our area. It doesn't sound like anyone's meeting that need. Was that something to start? And I think that sort of debriefing is really important. And then the other thing that my younger staff makes fun of me for this, but when I started doing this 30 years ago, every time I met at a conference, I would mail a handwritten thank you note.
There you go.
And I don't do it anymore because, quite frankly, it's impossible to get people's physical mailing.
I was about to say, I missed that note, Doug. What happened?
It's impossible. And a lot of people never even go into their office. So what I do is I always make sure to follow up with a thank you email. Thank you for your business. It was a pleasure meeting you. And I don't do it through an automated thing. I make it personal. And I also make sure that it's sent within a reasonable time frame. A week is good. 2 months, meh. And these are basic things, but it's easy to lose sight of that in the busy hustle and bustle of every day.
Amen.
You know? But it's those fundamentals that I think really help distinguish the winners.
I agree. Always back to the fundamentals, right? You get the fundamentals right, you win the game. As I tell my team. Fantastic. Very good advice. Doug, here my closing question to you is, with nearly 3 decades in this industry and so many conferences under your belt, all your sponsors, all your speakers that are subject matter experts. Really, you have access to some of the best within the industry across all these conferences. So you are hearing it from the horse's mouth, and you're seeing the specifics, and you understand what's a few layers beneath sometimes. With all that said, from a contextual standpoint, if you had a magic wand and you were to say, what's the one thing I would like to improve about our industry, what would that be?
I would say the number one thing I would recommend is this community has great empathy and great outreach to each other. But I think there is more of a need to come together and cross some of these barriers. And for example, in the substance use treatment world, we have these silos. We have physicians, we have non-prescribers, we have methadone prescribers, we have traditional 12-step oriented programs, we have MAT programs, we have primary residential rehab, we have people who focus only on outpatient. And it's relatively rare, it seems, that there's a unified message, a unified coming together that other areas of healthcare have and are able to achieve some incredible results from that unified message. And I think a conference is a great opportunity to come together, find that common bond, find that common value. The most amazing thing about this field is that everyone is working together to save lives. Everybody's doing it a little bit differently, and that's great because this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. And I think when you come together at a conference, you step out of your day-to-day, this is how we do it, and you can see how other people do it. You can see what other partners like yourself are out there. You can frankly be challenged a little bit. One of my creeds, maxims is if you go to a conference and there isn't just something there that makes you just a little, I don't know if I agree with that, or that kind of challenges my thinking. Great. That's why you went. You didn't go to just hear everything you already know or agree with everything in the room. I would say if I had this magic wand, I would just further encourage the whole field to find ways to further bring ourselves together. And I think doing so at events is one way to do that.
Amen. Very well said. And I think the industry definitely needs more of that. So strong words of encouragement. Doug, I know you mentioned several conferences and websites. If any of our listeners wants to get a hold of you, where's the best place to contact or find you?
Oh, just find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way. Douglas J. Edwards. That's the best way to find me. You can also, if you want to learn about everything that HMP does, you can go to hmpglobal.com. Reach out to us at any time. We're happy to answer any questions.
Fantastic.
And there I am without my glasses. I do need a new headshot. And I will tell you, Gary, I have thought about using AI to put these glasses in my head, but I thought, nope, I'm going to go somewhere in person and get a real photograph taken.
Yes, my man. That's the way to do it. Not AI for that.
Not for that.
That's fantastic. Doug, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing all your experiences and best practices. I hope a lot of operators take some of these recommendations to heart, come together, come to the conferences, come prepared, come debrief properly, and let's make the industry better together. So, Doc, thank you so much for being on the show, and I will see you in a short time in West Coast Symposium.
Sounds good. See you there, Gary.
See you there. Thank you for tuning into the Elevate podcast. If you like the content you heard today, make sure to subscribe to the channel and share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it. I'll see you in the next show.